obviously we're at the LGA conference in Cardiff, and a couple of things that have been touched on over the last 2 days have been about the value of fire, the cost of fire. Yesterday morning, Peter Holland talked about where we talk in terms of the cost of fire at the minute is if we have a kitchen fire, for example, it's cost this much in the fire damage, but actually we should be talking about the value of the house that we've saved. And again this afternoon it was talked about by Jennifer Cole, who touched on the introduction of the fire service through the British insurances to say actually early intervention reduces the cost to the economy, and she was referencing that in terms of our flood response. I just wondered what you thought about that.
Well, absolutely. The danger is that you make a wrong measure because the cost of fire, as you say, is predicated on events that actually happen, and we work out what the cost is loosely based on the insurance loss. So when we talk about cost of fire, it's what the insurance companies tell us it costs us to rebuild. What we're not seeing is the other side of the argument, which is the gain. So, as you say, what do we save our economy by responding to incidents and putting them out in their very early stages, or by preventing incidents happening in the first place? And so really there is quite an easy calculation to make, isn't there? Because you could say, well, if fires in the home, for example, have reduced by 40%, what was the cost when they were 40% more, and what's the cost now? You could make a rough and ready calculation of that, and that starts to point to the benefit of the fire rescue and the benefit it brings to society. The problem is that it's a much bigger question than that, because if we attend an RTC, or we go to a factory fire, or we lobby to have sprinklers installed so that a warehouse doesn't burn down, then there are some good figures in the reports about the effect of sprinklers in warehouses. And if we start to do those calculations, we get into some really, really big numbers in terms of the contribution that fire rescue service needs. And that's something that I know the Fire Brigade Union is concerned with, and it's also something that we're working on with the Fire Sector Federation and the Chief Fire Association to try to get a handle on what that, not what the figures should be, but what that advantage to our communities and our societies are. And it's a very, very important question.
There are two interesting points there about the false economies. Recently over the Christmas period we had an incident where a fire could have occurred in a school, and the alarm system didn't pick it up. It was because the school, to save money, was switching off the alarm system at night, because the cost that they have to send to the call collect centre. As a consequence, now they've realised that they could have lost a school and knock-on economic impact to local families, and so they're now reviewing that. In terms of the Fire Sector Federation, is it true to say that basically that work is being knocked on the head, or is that still ongoing at the minute?
No, it's actually quite developmental. It's at the other end of the spectrum. It's quite early in its development yet. And the thinking is, let's try to bring together, if for example we talk about a disaster like Lacanau House, who are all the agencies that touched on that over years, over decades? Who are all the people that, had they done something slightly different, the outcome would have been dramatically different? You bring all of those people together, all of those organisations together, so that we understand collectively what we do to manage community risk. Whether that's in a housing multiple occupation, as in that case, or a warehouse or whatever, and that really is what the role of the Fire Sector Federation is. So it's about the whole wider sector. So it's fledgling work at the moment. It's not coming to an end.
Okay. Well, it's good to see that there's that different way of thinking and looking at things. It's like at the minute when we talk about fire cuts, like Brandon Lewis today talked about fire deaths being down. What we're trying to do is look at it from the other side of things. Actually, what about rescues? Talking about fire deaths is a very negative way of looking at it. Looking at the cost of fire in the way we have been looking at it again is another negative way of looking at it. And it's just good to see that I think both sides are starting to come together with that generic push to actually look at the positive side of things.